All right. Am I audible? Okay. See you again. Uh, Hi. Audible? All right. I see an still echo from there. Okay. All right. I think it's fine. No, it's not. It's coming from somewhere. Okay. Uh, Still there. Sorry for the chaos. We are trying to. Hopefully, the next talk will be smooth. Somebody else has joined stream. Through that laptop, please. Yeah, but we won't fund it though. So, going ahead with the first talk, uh, thank you, Faizan. Thank you, Sakshi, for the warm welcome and to kicking off the session. I'm very glad to be here at the second Pune FOSS. I'm less nervous than last year, more, and I hope I'll try to speak more about what we do, and probably you'll have some of the points which Faizan mentioned in the what you will have by the EOD end of the day. So I'm going to talk about FOSS United, how we are strengthening the FOSS ecosystem in India, FOSS community in India. But before we move ahead, okay, so I'll give you a brief of myself. I work for FOSS United since 2020, and building community since I was in college, second year. I tried setting up a club in my college. I see that there was nothing except art fest. I felt, I am here in technical college. There has to be some technical stuff going on. People tinkering, learning, which is quite an issue in most of the colleges in India, because the engineering colleges in India are very recent trend. There used to be very uh, college like College of Engineering, Pune, IITs, NITs used to be the only college until a point. But then there was a boom. There were so many engineering colleges being established, and the culture didn't come. For example, we have a in College of Engineering, Pune, there is a FOSS user group, free software user group. So yeah, I thought I'll try to build a community in my campus. So it has been almost 6-7 years journey. So yeah, I was talking about strengthening FOSS community in India, and my question to myself is, why do we even need a FOSS community? Anybody have any answer? Not from the organizers. This is just for the participants. Any answer? I mean, it could be wondering, and you might have just slight idea. You could just stand and speak. Yeah, please.
To foster open source culture among the developers and students and those who want to develop something, innovate with products.
Yeah, but I think innovate with products comes when you know how to write a code right. So even there's a lot of steps behind it. I mean, yeah, I mean you are right. The answer is right. I was trying to. Okay, you had some answer. Maybe I'll. Yeah, so my answer is that if few minutes can make this, then what 1.2 billion can do. So it's just the need to change the mindset of the developers and to channelize all this energy towards, let's foster this idea of open source. And yeah, correct. So, I mean, imagine our daily life and the amount of time we spend on softwares, right? And I mean, at least in Bangalore, I see for every single service, there is an app for that. You don't have to step out of your home or even your bedroom. I mean, your room. Sorry. I mean, if you book an spa on Uber company, they'll come to your room to give you a spa. So my point is that our life is now uh, completely overtaken by softwares. I mean, the decision making, we use ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT. I don't have to learn every single grammars to write a very beautiful email to somebody to invite to speak at PuneFOSS, right? Uh, it's helping. I mean, I'm not saying that we should not. I do not learn grammar, but I have my upbringing or the school I attended was not great where I learned the best grammar. If I start learning grammar today, I'll be jobless, right? So I don't want to do that. I want to earn some money. So the need of FOSS community in India is because there are a lot of software demands in India by the people, individuals outside the India, by the companies, by the government, by academia. Uh, So yeah, and the reason is because it's a proven way to build sustainable IT ecosystem. When I say proven way, currently we all of our software we do not store data. Let's say we use Swiggy, and if you go and see the order history, is it saved in your mobile phone? No, right? Anybody store the data, Swiggy data in their own device? No, right? I mean, there is no option. Uh, so and all the internet runs on cloud, right? And we had an answer that we Linux could is built by I think I don't know the exact count number of contributors, but there are thousands of people who have worked on it. And if and okay, so when I said that most of our life our activities on cloud, and cloud is powered by Linux, which is built by thousands of software developer. So why not uh, other aspect of our daily life too? Why just cloud services? Why not the kind of software we use like the OS? Most of us who are in college, join colleges, start using Windows by default, not because it's your fault, but it's what the yeah, it's what that's what the laptop comes bundled up, right? So when I joined college, the first lab, I was in Kerala. I studied in Kerala, Kochi University, and I was trying to do some Windows shortcut to close my system, and I failed. And because I never knew the concept of having multiple like options to use another operating system. For me, Windows is the software. uh, Sorry. So I was talking about if Linux is saving, and to give you come back to the Swiggy example, Swiggy use all these servers for free without paying these 1,000 developers who has spent their 2-3 decades working on these. So that's the proven model that a company who use uh, open source FOSS, or the users we use, a lot of people use here Linux, they don't pay to the Linux user, right? So that's a proven way, and we end up learning things without paying to people. For example, the programming languages. Uh, Again, to just go in deeper about what do I mean by IT ecosystem when I say it is helping us in building a proven. It's a proven way to build a sustainable IT ecosystem. By IT ecosystem, I mean everybody, and this mostly covers all of us. Most of us are students here. A lot of people are here who are part of companies, uh, government, academia, because they all use software in their daily life, or build software. And I mean, sorry, again, I'm trying to give context. So all of these talks, I try to answer the questions to myself rather than answering to the people. I mean, which sometimes helps to the listeners as well. So when I say we need a FOSS community, I mean that there is a need of enough open source options, open source software options, so that when either of us, either companies, students, government, academia, want to build softwares, which is the de facto way to uh, start any programs. If you see a lot of initiative coming from government, for example, UPI, they use open source. That's why there is a need of open source software, so that all of these people who are a part of IT ecosystem, not just IT, daily life, the humans, they will be they won't be paying much, because let's say if government use a proprietary software, they end up paying billions to the proprietary, let's say Microsoft. If a government use uh, all the proprietary tools to build the stacks, let's say UPI or Aadhaar or FASTag, if they pay a lot of amount to the vendor, it actually, the money comes on our head to pay back to the government so that they can sustain. So yeah, we need a ecosystem. We need to build more open source software, and that's why we need a community of people who understand this and learn, use, contribute. Again, some successful programs to build this community of open source developers, open source users. I mean, we all know Google Summer of Code, right? Anyone who hasn't heard of it? I didn't heard it until I was in third year. That's why I'm just curious. Anybody who haven't heard of Google Summer of Code? Perfect. I mean, I think we are at quite fast pace. Anybody have heard of the term or this program called Open Source Program Office? Anybody? Okay. So we have, what do you call it? Reverse the coin, right? So is the coin. So this program is quite popular in Europe, not Europe, but in the West. I mean US and Europe, which means we're talking to somebody at SAP. Any of you knows SAP? Yeah. Is it proprietary or FOSS? Anybody thinks it's a FOSS? Okay. So yeah, SAP is a proprietary tool which charges heavily to all of the customers, and but at the same time they use open source because it helps them to build their IT, the whole platform system, very cheap. So even though they are a proprietary software, even though they build proprietary software, they have a program where they go and support back to the open source. And this program exists since, I think, at least 10 years. So we were having a chat with the SAP program, I mean, the open source program office of SAP. So this program office this is part of all these companies in US and Europe, mostly Europe. And what they do, they give back to the open source projects, or they go and talk about how they use open source so that others can get inspired and start using the way they use. They fund the projects. So we are talking to SAP, and they're interested in partnering with us. So the idea is all the companies have this program, certain programs where they give back to the community. In India, it's not a culture yet. That's what we're trying to build at FOSS United. UPI. So this is a government project I just mentioned. They use. I mean, we don't pay any single penny to use UPI service, right? And how come it's not like government do not pay? Government do not have the server bills for the UPI, but it's not as heavy as if they were using any proprietary tools or a database. So we are I mean, the government can sustain billions of transaction every year on UPI because they use open source. They believe that this is the way to have a sustainable system. Okay, so one more example, FOSSI. This is by IIT Bombay, and we also partnered them last year. Even we're talking to them this year for the Mumbai FOSS 2.0 conference, and they have a program FOSSI where they educate people, where they train people from the tier 2, tier 3 remote areas, train them with the latest technology. It could be, and all through the FOSS tools like Krita or all the. Have you heard Krita? Anybody? Nice. So you're not talking to you. So sorry. I'll come back. So FOSSI trained people in the remote areas with these open source tools so that they can learn without paying somebody and have a job. If they can acquire certain skills which is high in demand. So these are certain programs which promote the idea of building FOSS, or they use FOSS to build their systems to save money. or to give back to the community through programs like Open Source Program Office (OSPO). Uh, okay, so this was about a very top level view. I mean, I didn't discuss about every our so to give you, all of you must have heard about or must be listening about this company become $1 billion value, right? Until last year at least, right? Uh, because I mean they raised this much, 10 million, 50 million funds, and then they acquired this many companies. There are a lot of noise going around in currently that this particular company is getting, uh, going through certain things. So I'm going to talk about what is the current state of FOSS in India, FOSS community in India, how companies are, what exactly happens, uh, or what has been happening since the, let's say, last 20 years, or since 2020, 2000. Uh, so I think most of you must have heard of the, for example, Python user groups, or at least the conferences which happens in Pune, like Gopher Conf, Ruby Conf, right? Anybody heard of these conferences? Ruby, Gopher? Yeah. So these events happens. So there are monthly events of Python user group. Let's say happens in Bangalore, Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, and these are specific to one tool, one programming language. Uh, there are JavaScript, JS lovers. Uh, there are a lot of other programming, like, I mean, or frameworks like React. They have these monthly meetup. That's what happens, and these all are working, in silos. Let's say we are four people of who wants to organize. I mean, who learns, who are interested in React. We'll go together. We'll learn about it. But there are no connection where I'm see it's growing. I mean, for example, Faizan itself is part of multiple tech user groups in Pune. But what happens? They focused on one certain topics, but not the whole ecosystem. That's what we are trying to do at FOSS United. And there are yearly conferences like Gopher Conf, Ruby Conf, uh, or things like there was last year this Postgres Conf happened in Bangalore. But these are very irregular, I'll say, or not active India wide. I mean, there will be a couple of cities who will be doing the the Python meetups, but not, there's no way where there's no, I mean, we don't see this happening in all the cities continuously where they are connected with each other. So there are some old communities like Free Software uh, user group. I think so. This is for Karnataka and some other state. FSMI, I guess, and there is FSCI, Free Software Community of India, SMC. This is also in Kerala. DG Plug, Durgapur, Linux user group. It's in West Bengal. So these are old community, and they build. They do engagement very irregularly, or they're not active. Okay, I think I have some content from the notepad. Oops. Okay. Thank you. Uh, Right. So I was talking about the old groups like, Free Software Community of India, FSCI, SMC. So these were quite active, let's say in early 2000. And what happened? They all disappeared or became inactive because there were no full-time member, or there was no limit. Incentive for people to keep continuing and volunteering for these organizations. So there are the other kind of community which exists in India is the college specific. For example, there is one in Amrita. There is one Amrita FOSS in Kerala. There's I don't know if it's right, but the College of Engineering Free Software User Group. There is open source developers community Noida. It's quite old, quite active. There is NIT Calicut's FOSS cell. They do FOSS meet every year. These are some old college clubs which are in India. From the academia, there are certain initiatives like NPTEL. All of us at least heard of it. So I mean, it's a open knowledge sharing program. And when I say FOSS community, it doesn't have to have the software or the code. It's about knowledge sharing, which is pretty much linked with software, hardware, and everything which is around learning and sharing. So there is NR Cell by IIM Bangalore. They fund open source projects. At least they used to. Now it has become more on the entrepreneurial uh, driven. I mean, they fund entrepreneurs to with the grants for certain period, and some government initiative. It's not much active in India anymore, but this is called IT at School by Kerala government. So I give you the example. When I was in college, I tried to use some Windows shortcut on Linux. That is because a decade back, the Kerala government threw out all the Windows, and replaced by Linux. So currently, we see that all the schools, all the colleges in India, in Kerala use open source or Linux, and they save. There was some information. I mean, some data that they have saved around 200 crore rupees in certain years. So I'll talk about how we are doing it, and we are still very young. I mean, even though we are 4 years, which is a lot from the startups founder mindset, but we are doing a little stuff, and we have just started scaling. And we were one people full time until last year June. Now we are 12 people. So we are trying to scale whatever we have learned in the first few years, and with hiring more right people to the team. So events like PuneFOSS, we do regular events in multiple cities. We are scaling slowly, and even in Pune, we haven't seen much events in the last 1 year. But we have some announcement from Faizan at the end. But the idea is to have more regular events in all the cities, have more engagements, people network, learn from others. We also work with governments to make sure that they have certain laws, policy where they only acquire uses open source. Even though I give the example of UPI, but there are a lot of departments, a lot of ministry who still prefer or use proprietary. We invite partners to we give grants to the people who are building open source. If you are looking for funds, reach out to us. We will happy to have a discussion. The application will open after 1st April. It's currently on pause. We invite industry folks, the companies, to come and sponsor, fund us so that we sustain ourselves, and also they give back to the community through FOSS United. We collab with academia, IITs, NITs to discuss about it, to have more discussions, networking, and probably some more tangible outcome. But again, like I said, it's a very long term goal, and this all takes time. Uh, I'll quickly wrap this up by, there's a couple of more slides after this. So since 2020, we have almost 11K participants. We have funded 2.0 crore to the grants, the FOSS projects. If you are again building one, let us know. We have almost. Again, these data are quite old. Till 31st October, we have uh, sponsored or supported 15 plus projects. Again, these are not equity free. We just give it on the trust basis that you will work on it. And almost 30 or 30 plus companies have helped us to run this for the last 4 years. For the students, we have a lot more programs coming. So far, whatever we have done, it's mostly for the professionals. And in the last 1 year, we've started a few things like FOSS Club, and we are currently in 12 colleges. So yeah, for the upcoming programs, these are mostly focused on students community. Springboard is one where we will help, will give internship to the students. These are again, we haven't announced it anywhere. We'll give more details soon through the newsletter. We have Season of Commits, similar to Google Summer of Code. We'll partner with FOSS projects in India, and we'll give stipend based 3 months, 6 month long program. And again, if you're part of any college and looking to establish a club, uh, we will have the application open in couple of months. Not yet, it's not open yet, but yeah, that's the goal for this coming 6 months to 1 year. That's it. If you think you want to know more about us, join us on Telegram. We have forum. Uh, yeah, join our newsletter. That's it. You can find me with at WISHARYA Visharya on Twitter, or .com is my domain. Thank you.
I think he has his own channel. So we don't need to. Right. Huh? Hmm? Presentation. So,
You all got what FOSS is and how you can contribute to more projects. How can you learn more about how to have grants from FOSS? So feel free to post anything on social media, and also feel free to have like interactive session with any of, and like Vishal is here, Faizan is here. We all are here. You can ask any questions if you feel like. So moving on to the next session, which is building an open source culture in companies by Mohammad Ali Chirawala, which is also called as Mac. He's famously called as Mac, and he's the CTO at Wednesday. Mac's world revolves around building digital products for diverse clients, including various unicorns and Fortune 500 companies, with a focus on assisting startups, unicorns, and entrepreneurs through applied AI, data, and application modernization services. Wednesday has 10% India's unicorn as their customers. So, looking forward for Wednesday's experience through today's session. He strongly believes that small group of people can make a huge impact, and whether it's launching an enterprise-grade solution consumed by millions of users in 30 days or solving an ed tech problem for the next decade, solutions can always be come up from a small team rather than establishing a huge community or a bigger groups. So I hope this session is impactful enough for all of you to be fueled enough for the open source enthusiast today. So yeah, give a round of applause for Mike.
it could. Present only. इसमें शेयर है ना मिला ना इसके व्यू को और स्लाइड भी दिखा सकते वैसा कर रही है प्रेजेंटर व्यू कर लो so do this yeah so you get this here and then you इसको वहां ड्रैग कर लो ये हो गया यहाँ पे continue explain you can नोट से स्टेज में किधर गए स्टेज में बाहर खड़े हैं योगा ठीक है से फुल स्क्रीन मेरा तो फंक्शन है फिर so your mouse pointer let's see okay I won't be able to change the slides from here sorry thanks with the HDMI code. Check. So hopefully that was quite a build up and you guys are excited for what I have to say. So I'm Mac and I'll talk about how to build an open source culture. To start off with a little background about me, in the last 5 years, we've open sourced about 75 repos, and these templates and toolings have helped power unicorns and unicorns in India and around the world. As a team, we've contributed to projects, open source products that are maintained by companies like AWS, GitHub, Meta, amongst others. The tooling that we've built has helped save thousands of hours in dev time. And today I'll share with you how we've created a culture where we are able to open source one product per month and more. And I'll also tell you why we did it. The first question is obviously why open source? And it's simple. The biggest and probably the greatest example that the world has ever seen in terms of large scale collaboration has to be open source. You have a group of people that have never met each other, probably don't speak the same language, don't work in the same time zone, and don't get paid, that actually can change the world, quite literally. Linux, Android, even React or Node that I'm sure all of you guys use are very good examples of open source products, and how well they can be built. And something that's common amongst most well built open source products are the small things. Maybe it's a detailed README, steps how to run it locally, a CI pipeline that ensures that your code adheres to a certain level of hygiene, a CD pipeline that automates your releases. It's because systems and processes work even where individuals fail, especially where individuals fail. And when you think about it, right, it's a byproduct of this, that open source software is built as if you're not going to be around to explain it to the next person, because you're not going to be around to explain it to the next person. There is no KT process in open source, and that's what inspires an insane amount of accountability and ownership. In fact, the gap between there's a bug in the library and here's the fix to the bug in the library is this small bridge called ownership. um, and and that's the thing, right? There's no red taping in open source. You don't need white hair or years of experience to actually make a change. All you need to do is do. You build and it is merit based. You will be able to contribute and it does level the playing field. And while doing so, it makes you fearless. Building in public has a way of building in public has a way of doing that, right? It's constantly putting yourself out there, being open to feedback, being able to change hats between maintainer and contributor. And that's quite a change, by the way, right? Because 1 minute you're the king of the ecosystem, you're carving out direction, and the very next minute you better be a good citizen. And that change, it brings about a level of humility that can never otherwise be attained, right? So there's a lot of grounding that happens when you're open sourcing your work. And what it's led to for us is the creation of a mindset where each of us believe that we can make a difference. And I think believing is the first step in doing. Right. While all of this sounds amazing, you're not going to see these benefits if all you're doing is putting proof of work out there or phony README updates to popular open source projects. So let's talk a little bit more about how to create an impact with open source. Right, so open source projects typically can be categorized into two parts, right? One is proof of work and the other is value addition. With proof of work, what happens is that you're typically building something. It's a pet project, it's something that you wanted to do. Maybe it's that next Netflix clone or e-commerce product that you're building. You program it, you build it, and you push it out, you make it public. Though this is technically open source, it's not ready for consumption. You've just put out proof of work. So the impact of that is limited. However, when you talk about value addition, you're talking about building something that other people want. You're talking about building something that other people will consume. You're thinking about the consumers first, the other developers or the other business users that are going to use your product. Now, by definition, you're doing something that is white space, and that requires us to constantly think about the end user. It facilitates or makes sure that we need to have a lot of empathy. And what's common, right, in order to be able to build something that has value is that it takes time and consistency. Especially for people like us, which is knowledge workers. Consistency is not a one time small effort endeavor. But in fact, sorry, impact is not a one time endeavor, right? Small effort endeavor. It's about consistency, and that requires motivation or incentives to be aligned. For knowledge workers, there's this author called Daniel Pink who's written an amazing book called Drive, where he categorizes what motivation looks like for knowledge workers, and he categorizes it as motivation 2.0, and it's based on three items. Right, you have mastery, impact, and autonomy. So let's zoom into mastery a little bit. You don't become a front end expert by building one front end app, or you don't become a front end expert by building the same app 100 times. You do it, you become an expert, or you get mastery by doing a little better the next time, by doing a little more the next time. And if you do this long enough, that is when you become a master for sure, right? And when you think about how you can continue providing impact at a large scale, or you're motivated to provide this impact, you want to not be told what needs to be done. It has to come inherently from within, and that's autonomy. No project management, no open source project has a project management board where you're assigned tickets on what needs to be done. In fact, you pick what you must do. Just 1 minute. In fact, you pick what you must do. You build trust, and you keep contributing more in the ecosystem. And it's that arc, right, where you move from contributor to maintainer. And just as in open source and in life as well, more people providing clarity and direction is what the world needs. And the last one is impact. Now, for impact, the understanding is that once I open source my code, or once I make it public, that's the end of the open source journey, right? But in fact, that's the beginning. And that, because you need to understand what the ecosystem wants, you need to build for it, and then you need to see how the ecosystem adapts and evolves after that. And all of this is well and good, right? But culture cannot be created because of a few facts or like an impact presentation. But before we talk about creating culture, let's talk about what company culture is. So Andrew Grove, who's the legendary CEO of Intel, he's also attributed with creating OKRs and a bunch of other accolades. What he defines company culture as is a group of individuals that perform similar actions in similar situations. So then the question is, how do you get consistency in actions from a group of people with diverse backgrounds and diverse experiences? The answer is through rituals. Similar to how you have rituals at home, where Friday nights are game nights or Sunday lunch is a picnic, workplaces have rituals as well. For example, you'll see a certain team who's always lively, and you'll see certain teams that are beginning every call with pleasantries. They seem to know exactly how each team member is feeling, they seem to know what's going on in other team members' life, etc. And there are teams that are always prepping before a meeting, and as a result of that, their meetings are shorter. And it's these silent features that you just adapt because everybody's doing it that makes the rituals of your company. And these rituals then lead to company culture. So what we did in order to propagate a culture of open source was focus on rituals that inculcated our values. And now I'll share with you a little bit of what's worked with us. And by rituals, I'm not talking about the number of cups of coffee that I consume on a daily basis. So we broke it down and we tried to understand everything that we did intentionally and what we did unintentionally that led to this culture of open source where everybody is contributing to the ecosystem, right? And I won't lie to you and tell you that each and every step of this was planned. A lot of it happened to us and a lot of it was orchestrated. Today, I'll give you my entire vantage point. So templates and onboarding. So even before we started Wednesday, we built the first open source project for Wednesday, which was called the React template. And the React template became the basis of how we built React applications. It consisted of all of the different libraries, tooling, the frameworks, the conventions that we believed in, the conventions that we thought would help build a good front-end React application. And we condensed that because we wanted consistency in our actions as a team. We wanted all of us to build products in a certain way, according to a certain standard. And once we did that, we started Wednesday, and then we did something very unconventional. For a company that was very young, one day precisely, we had an onboarding program. So we actually built the onboarding program per stack, and it involved going through any open source template that we've built associated to the stack when you first join. So it's spread across 3 weeks, and a successful onboarding would be one where you've contributed back to the template. The new person that was onboarded will contribute back. It's a very small and a little thing, but what we realized is that every time somebody gets a fresh perspective on how we do things, they're able to highlight a little something about what could be better, a little more of what can be done. And that allowed us to take the first step, and that's always the toughest, right? So each person, when they enter the Wednesday ecosystem, they take the first step in their onboarding or in their open source journey. The next thing that we did was Wednesday Wisdom. So for the past 3 odd years, we've been running an internal sharing session every other Wednesday, where 30 minutes, two talks, two speakers, 15 minutes each. And what happens is, as a byproduct of that, you have the rest of the team learning off of innovation always. So one person contributes to everybody else's learning. And when you look about it inversely, right, you give once and you keep getting. And that's what we've been able to do. Wednesday Wisdom is primarily about innovation that you're seeing happen in the world. So it needn't always be proof of work. It could just be showcasing what the rest of the world is doing. Because again, we need to be good citizens in that ecosystem as well. Or it could be what you've adopted from your learnings of the ecosystem. So we run a small cohort called Expanding Our Horizons, where each person takes on like an ambitious endeavor that they're trying to do. So we say something a little unconventional. We say be in discomfort. And we've realized that a lot of growth happens right over there in discomfort. So we want the next challenge, and we take on ambitious endeavors in order to make ourselves uncomfortable. And as a result of that, of these same endeavors, Wednesday created or started the data engineering service line. Primarily, we did a lot of app dev, and then all of us had an itch, and then we just had to scratch that itch, right? So we started doing more stuff that we found challenging, more stuff that felt ambitious and was outside of our comfort zone. And about a couple of years ago, or a little more than that, we started doing a lot of data engineering. And today that's led into a fully functional data engineering team, some of which are here already today. The last one, in terms of rituals that I'd like to talk about, is product ceremonies. So, empathy in tech is not something that's really spoken about, right? Everybody wants to build products based off of vision, right? But what happens is everybody is building products based off of a ticket. So obviously there is a misalignment in terms of what gets built versus what was envisioned, right? So how do you solve for that? So what we started doing is pretty simple. If you, I would recommend another book. It's called The Technical Manager's Path by Camille Fournier. She talks about creation of squads. So it's quite simple, right? Your squad consists of your customer support executive, your sales rep, everybody that's involved in the consumption, marketing, or selling of your product or the backlash of it. So when you ask a customer service executive what's the worst thing about the product, they don't care about a lot of things that the engineers care about or the designer cares about, right? Because they're getting battered by back-to-back customer calls on what's not actually working about the product. So it gives you a very real version in terms of what customers that have bought into the ecosystem are actually complaining about. And then when you think about it from the other perspective, and you hear what the sales rep thinks you should build, it's very different, right? Because what the customer complains about versus what is needed to make the sale are completely different, right? So it grounds us in terms of what we should be building and how we should be building it. And when you think about it, right, that's what open source does as well. There is no product manager telling you do this, the customer wants it. You need to pick up, you need to understand what the ecosystem requires today, not because somebody told you, but because you understand the ecosystem. And I think that mindset is what open source cultivates more and more, that it's not my job to type a few keys on the keyboard, right? It's my job to build products that actually are needed. And having these product ceremonies has helped cultivate that mindset more. But more importantly, I think having an open source culture has led to building better products for us. And uh, oh, if I can leave you with just one thought today, I'd like to say that open source isn't about making your code public. It's a lot more than that. Thank you. Uh, can I take any questions? Anybody? Yes.
Interesting. So you said that's a very so, but how do you tackle this post stage where the customers who are actually trying out your product now they want a feature that's not in your role. So then how do you do it?
How do you prioritize what goes when, right? Even though there are certain customers. So what he's saying, right, essentially is that, so he works in customer success. So he's seen all of this firsthand a lot of times, where you've got a few paying customers and they obviously want something. It's not particularly issues, but they want something to be part of your product roadmap. Where your product roadmap is probably catering more towards sales, right? Because you need to increase top line. So how then do you prioritize? I think it first starts off by understanding what your business objectives are for this year, right? And then you drill down into what your product goals become basis those business objectives. And then there's something known as the rice framework, which tells you or helps you understand what to prioritize in terms of impact, the effort, etc. And that then becomes your guiding principle. So there are few business methods that you must employ in order to prevent any one customer having absolute authority over the product roadmap. So as long as those items are aligned, you can continue to stay true to the business objectives that allow growth for the next decade or so, rather than focusing on immediately solving customer pain points or customer feature demands. What I've realized works very effectively to sort of make sure that there isn't a lot of anxiety associated to customer demands not being met is speaking to them more often and trying to squeeze in a little bit that helps them move in the right direction. So when they ask for a full feature that requires a lot of effort, I think trying to understand like an MVP mindset that helps keep the wolf at bay has worked very well for us so far. So you're on the right track then. Any more questions? Yes, please. Thank you.
Typically, we try to solve a problem in their ecosystem. Now, the whole of it is with them, like with the police.
Yes.
So, how we can find bandwidth in apart from that and put all this culture and contribute back to the org where we started. So, we tried a couple of things, but this was a big challenge. I think some of you.
Yeah, I have an opinion about it, a lot of things. No, but just if I understand your question correctly, you come from a data engineering services background, and a lot of your time is spent primarily, and obviously, right, consultants are looked at under 100x magnifying glass, right? Every minute needs to be accounted for. So, how then do you create a culture where you can create some kind of innovation, right? I think the answer is by creating impact, right? Questions based on what or questions based on how you're doing something don't arise that often when we're able to provide a lot of impact. So the way we've started addressing that is to start a product on a high note. So we've created a very large open source ecosystem that ensures that we don't do any setup or any kind of tasks that are repetitive in nature. So the day we start is the day we start adding the first line of business logic. That experience is very rare, right? So when you speak to them about it a little more, what happens is that they realize that the effort that's going into innovation in open source is actually coming back to them 100x, right? So we've actually been in conversations primarily where they're saying open source में क्या नया किया है, right? अभी what is the latest trend in the ecosystem? अभी और क्या करना चाहिए, right? So the moment we're able to create an impact or provide outcomes that are beyond measurable, right, it facilitates a lot of this. So that's the approach that we've primarily used and has worked for us.
So that impact.
100%, 100%. Right. The first, I mean, like they say, right, the first place you start charity at is at home. So the first place you start innovation is what you do in your day job. And I think then it just results in a snowball effect. Right. Can I take any more questions, please? Thank you. Hundred percent. I always use every opportunity for marketing. So, there's another talk by one of my colleagues, Praveen. He's built something known as the service picker, which allows. I'll let him get into more details, but it saves you a bunch of time and money, and it works across the ecosystem and infrastructure. So I'll break it down and answer your question in a few parts. So what we did first is we created a lot of templates. Now these templates encapsulate our thought process, etc., and automation is at the heart of it, right? So everything that we do goes out with a lot of tests, and there's a lot of consistency in what we do. So we're able to write the same kind of code in every ecosystem. right? So there is a lot of consistency in how you perceive things. So when your fellow developer writes a function and you see the name, right, you know exactly what is going to happen within it, right? Because there is a lot of consistency in how you're building, right? So you don't use it in some other way than it was supposed to be written in. So our template sort of solved for that problem. Once we solve the templates problem, or we solve the consistency problem, we said, okay, now there are a bunch of repetitive tasks, right? So let's say, for example, you're writing front end components, or you're writing a front end application. We've got something known as React Flow Key, which does scaffolding for test containers and stuff like that, right? So you can scaffold entire ecosystems, and all you do is write business logic. All of the other boilerplate storybooks, your snapshot tests, base unit tests, your connection to Redux, Saga, so on and so forth, just comes out of the box. So we then focused on productivity. Within productivity, we did a bunch of stuff that, for example, one of the problems that you have with GraphQL is that you definitely have documentation, but let's say you want to run your CI and hit each and every API, right? Then it's sort of like an anti-pattern, because you've got GraphQL, but then you don't want a collection runner either. So we built a tool that takes a GraphQL endpoint and spits out the entire Postman collection that you can run in your CI. So you get like a base bunch of E2Es just out of the box, probably 15 seconds. And in the next leg of our journey, we focused on just one to N, right? So a lot of these aspects are 0 to 1 journeys, but the problems that you face in 1 to N journeys in ecosystems where stakeholder alignment is probably the biggest bottleneck. Tech is not, which is very different, right? Startup made tech is the biggest bottleneck. Like an enterprise made tech is not the bottleneck. Alignment is the bottleneck. So we built a lot of tools that solve for alignment issues, right? Primarily focused at the 1 to N journey. I'd love if you all would take a look at our open source presence. It's github.com/Wednesday-solutions. We will try to put a link in the next presentation that comes. We'll do. She's telling me there's time, but these questions are really good, so I'm gonna. Perfect, perfect. We'll do one more question, please. Yes. So we're a services company. So we build products for a few unicorns, Fortune 500s in India and across the world. So the way we make money is by building insane products, right? Absolutely amazing, breathtaking products. A lot of a lot of the products that we've built are in your phones, and this is not an exaggeration. So that's how we make money. But in order to build products that live in your phone, we need to be at the top of our game. And this is our investment in making sure that we're at the top of our game. All right. Thank you, guys. You guys have been an amazing audience. Thank you.
To talk more on Wednesday or to know more on what Wednesday does and everything, you can connect with people around Wednesday are here. And also, we have a following talk post lunch, which will be given by Praveen. And also, Matt is around, so you can connect with him. So, moving on to the next speaker, who is Ruhan Goswami. And sorry. So the next talk would be basically dealing with human-centered technology, field notes, and stories of social innovation using FOSS United tools. And this would basically cover AI/ML. So basically, you can also revolve around building a small application using AI. Also, it will resolve a lot of complex problems such as how AI can bring in innovation in government policies. And to to brief you more, what you have not learned in classrooms will be practically taught here today. So I would highly recommend you to grab all the knowledge and also connect with Rohan whenever you are free to know more on how AI can help resolve problems. So over to you, Rohan, without wasting much time. Thank you.
Oh, I can take her.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I know that you're all hungry, not for wisdom, but literally hungry. I'm hungry as well, right? So what I'm going to do for this particular session is that while I was sitting there, I kind of changed my strategy a little bit. I know that you've been sitting here for quite some time. A lot of heavy but very, very insightful stuff we have to digest this morning. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to flip my talk a little bit. So instead of talking about how do you use FOSS to build product, I'm actually going to talk about what you should not do when you're building product, right? Because there's a lot of conversation out there about what are the methods, processes, ideal for building solutions. But just something to remember is that it's only like 1% of projects that make it to the news, right? So there's this bias that we all have that every project is successful, and I think very little is spoken about stuff that began but never saw the light of day. And I want to bring about a little bit of personal experience, as I speak about that. So you can't begin a session without Drake, right? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about a little bit of personal experience. I've been an entrepreneur for quite some time. One of the reasons why I've been chatting up with all the volunteers is because I started my first company when I was in college, right? And I was also an organizer for events like this. So I kind of know what's happening out there in the chaos, when they have to also organize lunch and we're running out of time. So I empathize with all of that. So I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. I didn't have a lot of people, sort of guiding me about what is right and what is wrong. But right now, I specialize in social innovation, and I work a lot with the UN. I work with some of the top brands in the world. I also own and run two companies, which I will talk about towards the end. But what I just want you to remember is everything that I'll be speaking about here today is drawn from personal experience. Right? So I'm going to keep it as anecdotal as possible, so you get a little bit of insight of what my journey has been like. And I owe a lot of it to open source because I've been using open source tools. I was a part of the Mozilla community back in the day. So I kind of owe a lot of things to this community. So this is me paying back to like my younger self if I got a chance to speak to you. So that's why I'm here today. Okay. Now, when I talk about projects I've worked on, and I'm very happy to speak about all of these projects during lunch. But a couple of examples that I want to give you of just open source tools and methods and innovations that I've been using. For example, some of the methods I'll be sharing with you, my team has been using it to combat malaria in Mozambique. That's my team out there on the ground, where we use a lot of tools that this community works with to build a rapid diagnostic system, right? I've also been involved in projects which literally make agriculture cool. Let me ask you this question. Anybody here wants to become a farmer? Anyone here wants to be a farmer? Like that's your life's goal. Yeah, you do? But you want to be a farmer. Is that something you've told your parents? कि पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं farmer बनने के लिए? That is awesome. Have you told your parents? No, right? It's not ideally something you speak about at home because nobody wants to be a farmer. You want to work in agri-tech, but no one really wants to get into agriculture, which is a problem around the world, not just in India, but also in a lot of other developing countries, where the youth is trying to get out of agriculture and not into agriculture. Right? Agriculture is not cool. Your parents are not going to be happy if you tell them that you're coming to college to go and become a farmer. But what we've been trying to do is we've been trying to set up a lot of open innovation labs. In fact, we run our own school of sustainable innovations in Kenya. That's right there from our school, where We are working with farmers on the ground, and we're seeing if we can bring students and researchers to develop open source innovations that can help solve problems that some of these farmers face. So it's farmer owned but student driven, a lot of these innovations. Also, I've been working on HPV prevention and cancer care. In fact, that's something that has taken up like the last 2 years of my life. HPV vaccines are very popular now, right? Of course, after the recent government promotions about getting the vaccine, you should get it if you haven't. But I've also been involved in working with patients and doctors on the ground, seeing if we can track the spread of HPV and seeing if we can design patient-centric innovations to stop the spread and also to look at cancer care. And of course, I've also been working with slum refugees. So that's me in Egypt back in 2019, where again, a lot of methods that I'll be talking about were used to design solutions on the ground. And we always try to see if we can document, how we go about doing some of this work and make as much of our tools and research and processes and methods available, to people so that they can also benefit from it, right? My whole purpose of doing this is to give you a background of where I'm coming from. I'm a field person, but I'm also an engineer. So I used to be a developer. I built a company and then moved to the field. And what I constantly realize is that developers do not think about, as Max said, the people on the other side of your app, right? Because we are so engrossed with what stack we are going to use, what's the latest out there, and we are doing a lot of things for vanity. Not all of us, some of us doing a lot of things for vanity and thinking very little about what happens when you are no longer in control of your release or your app. What happens once it's out there in the field and real people are using it? There are things to account for which you will never find out in your classrooms. So it's very important that you start thinking about the other side, which is mainly your user base, right? And that's what I'm trying to go to do here today. Bridge the gap between you as developers and how do you really think about problems and apply your skills to solving real problems for real people. It's very different from what it seems like when you're sitting in your classrooms, right? And I know that because I was in those classrooms myself. So yeah, basically been doing this for the last couple of years around the world. Now, in order to help you get some of these insights, what I want to do is I'm going to keep this a little personal, right? So I'm going to back it up to the origin of how I started doing the kind of work I do right now. And I'm going to talk about a few things which might seem very weird for a FOSS conference, but I want you guys to bear with me and I'm going to help you connect the dots. Now, I grew up in this extremely small town in the northeast of India. I wish I could say nice ringtone, but it's not. Yeah. So I go in very, very small town, right? Right there on the map, like very close to Nepal, Bhutan, and India's border with China. I'm a Pahari, as we would say. Please do not post pictures of Maggie in the mountains. It makes no sense to me. That's not what we do. But I grew up there, right? Now, this geographical context is very important because the place that I grew up in is so remote that it's mainly known for the Himalayas and the TS states, right? But it is also known as an elephant corridor. That's what traffic looks like back at my mom's stays, right? And I've actually still better than Bangalore, right? It's manageable. But I've in fact I've spoken at TEDx about this particular phenomenon that happens there, which I will not speak about here, which is basically there's this weird thing that happens there where elephants get drunk. Literally, I'm not making this up, right? Elephants get drunk in that area. Of course, elephants don't manufacture alcohol. It's on human alcohol that they get drunk. And it's bizarre. If you want to know more about that, you can just go ahead. You can ask me for the link or you can just go to my website. Now, here is why I'm talking about all of this, right? So you can imagine a place that is remote. Now, this place was so remote that the first pizza outlet opened in 2020, right? In the pandemic, somebody had an idea कि ये area को pizza खिलाना चाहिए, right? So my mom was very happy. He said that Pizza Hut opened up here, but it turned out to be Pizza Home, right? It's a knockoff, not Pizza Hut. But interestingly, internet was available in that area in 1999, which I always found very interesting growing up, right? Do you guys know about cyber cafes? Has anybody gone to cyber cafes? Right? So the first cyber cafe in the region opened up in 1999. I don't know if you guys know about this, but India had a public policy that introduced internet using MTNL in 1997, which is a very big deal because we're a very young country, right? It's not even been 80 years since our independence. So for a young country to think about introducing internet in a country that vast, which also reached up my place, is just bizarre, right? But there was internet in my area, and what we kind of realized as a means of that, and this was the only cyber cafe, by the way, in like a 50-kilometer radius, right? Literally like one of those memes where you cross a river to go to school, you cross a river to go to the cyber cafe. But here is how it's interesting. I kind of realized in life that internet is more important than pizza. Here is what I mean. Because our region had access to the internet, we had open access to resources that would never have been available in a region so remote, right? Never. And because we had access to resources, we had access to the same opportunities, the same information, the same resources as somebody sitting in the Silicon Valley. And that was a big game changer, right? Like my cousin is a researcher at Stanford University. That's impossible for a region like that, but that was possible because we had internet very, very early, right? Even before pizza, which came up like 4 years ago. And that kind of taught me a very important lesson in life, which is if you are able to give the right tools, open tools to a community, and you can teach them how to use it. Because back in the day in the cyber cafe, you had a person who would also teach you how to browse the internet. Nobody there knows how to browse the internet, right? So think about it from a perspective. As a developer, you're going to make the UI and the UX, but your users have never seen an app or a concept like the internet before. They have no idea how to use it. So there is somebody sitting there as a developer. You'll never know this person in a cyber cafe who's actually sitting and teaching, other people how to use your UI, right? Which will never come into account when you're really planning for these things. And I saw that firsthand. So that kind of led me to really having this sort of philosophy in life, which I just shared. You really can help communities transcend their boundaries, transcend their limitations, and help them solve their own problems by giving them access to open tools, right? And that kind of became like a catchphrase that I started using, which also, if you think about it, is very aligned with the open source philosophy, right? Giving open tools, open methods, documenting it well, knowledge workers like Mac and the community actually supporting it is so important because now it doesn't matter where you are. You don't really need a teacher. You can learn if you have access to tools. And that's a concept I sort of carried forward in my life. But I want you guys to remember this entire thing, right? Internet is greater than pizza, because I realized that something was missing here, and I'll tell you what that is. So when I was in college, as I said, that's me in college. Nobody needs two laptops. Which one? Good stuff. I would win like a 10-year challenge any day. This one, the one in the front, the weird one, right? Typical boys dorm room. Nobody needs two laptops. Nobody has two laptops in college. This is only for a photograph. Like I borrowed my roommate's laptop so I don't see. And I look like a developer. I look like I'm doing serious stuff. Like nobody works like that, to be honest. But this picture is interesting because this was a picture of me and my team when we had already built our first company. I was 19 years old. I had no idea how to run a startup or even build products back then. And I was working on the same concept of giving open source tools and also teaching people how to use it so they can solve problems. I made a couple of mistakes. But before that, everything that I'm talking about here, like I said, is advice I would have given to my younger self. So all advice is autobiographical. It's a quote I love from this guy called Austin Kleon, who's a writer and an artist. And what really happened when I was doing that is that I was a FOSS contributor. I built my startup, built a team, had an office space. I had an investor, early potential users, and I thought I was doing very well in life. I thought there would be a movie made on me someday. Right? I told my parents at home, don't worry, I'm all set, right? There's a movie going to be made on me someday, doing well in life. As a 19-year-old, it gets to your head, right? But here is what happened. Any guesses? Yeah, of course. I failed, right? Oh, by the way, there's me having an event at my college launching my startup. I hope you recognize me by now. This guy, this weird guy is me, right? Um, now, here's what happened. 2 years of running the company, bunch of us, in spite of having checked all the boxes in the entrepreneurship and product building playbook, of course, I didn't have someone like Mac to tell me where I went wrong back then, but we failed. And we failed spectacularly. Didn't just fail. Right? We failed like in a way that we became an example of like, this is what you're not supposed to do. Right? Which is why now I give talks like this. But let me ask you this question, guys. What is like the worst phone call you've ever had in your life? Worst. Horrible. You don't want to relive that moment anymore. What's the worst phone call? You're so morbid. As the anchor of this event talking about death, sitting in the first row. Fair enough. That's a bad call. Anyone? What's the worst phone call? Breakup? Of course. That's why you want to be a founder. So it's international call. 40 minutes. Your call is anonymous. It's an international call for 40 minutes. It's like a podcast, right? So you have to listen to it at like 2x speed. That's what it feels like. I'll tell you what my worst phone call was. I had to tell my team that we have to shut down the company. And I didn't just have to tell my team. My team consisted of students. In fact, I had a team member that had dropped out of college to work at my company. I didn't drop out of college. He did. So don't drop out of college is basically what I'm trying to say. It makes no sense. You're not Steve Jobs. This is not the US, right? Don't be stupid. But I had to have a call with their parents, explaining to them why I'm not going to be able to have an office space for them anymore. And ever since that day, I'm scared of moms. I can't tell you what the phone calls were like with the mothers I was speaking to, trying to explain why I messed their sons' lives up and daughters' lives up. But it was terrible, right? And of course, there's no movie made on me, obviously, not yet. Now, here's the point. I always start with my story of failure before I talk about all the success, which you can Google for me and read. I know it sounds obnoxious, but I don't want to waste time talking about successes because nobody talks about these things, right? What it really feels like out there when you're doing it, like beyond all the concepts and beyond all the theories. I walked away with some pretty important lessons, which ties back into the FOSS mindset. So, a couple of lessons just for all of you, really, really quick. First of all, please do not build a product in search of a problem. This is typical rookie mistake a first-time product builder or entrepreneur makes, where you're so excited about the technology that you just build something and then you try to see who's going to buy it. Please do not do that, right? You're building products for real people. If you're building it for yourself, that is great. If it's a hobby project, that's okay. But in general, if you're getting into product building or entrepreneurship, understand problems before you jump into building solutions or products, right? Do not build products in search of a problem. Lesson number 2, we have this bias where we tend to feel like there's a lot of things that we want to put into our product because we care about them so much. But please understand that your users may not really care about all of those things, right? It is a little sad, but our end consumers don't care about whether you made the product using FOSS or not, right? They don't. It doesn't make a difference. Let me ask you this question. Netflix. How many of you here know the tech stack of Netflix? The entire tech stack of Netflix. Anyone here knows it? Of course. You use it every day. You don't care about what they're using, right? To build the product. That's the consumer mindset. Nobody cares about whether you build it using open source or not. But building products using open source technologies is a benefit that you have as a developers. That's on you, right? And that's amazing. But you have to understand that your consumers care about their problems getting solved and not what technology you're using to solve that problem. Also, not going to talk about this because Mac already has. In a startup, your culture is everything. Not strategies, not fundraising, not your marketing, not even the product that you're building. It's the culture you have internally as a team, which brings me to the last point, which, one sec, let me hide this, which is please, if you're picking a team for anything, including organizing an event like this, pick a team that you can pick a fight with. If you're not able to honestly tell a team member, when they're messing up, and still put together a great product or a great company or a great event, you have the wrong team member, right? You have to be able to speak to them as honestly as possible, and vice versa, and still be aligned with the mission of what you're doing. But all of these things uh, within your team and externally, which is the people that you're building for. And it's very important that you always take them into account, right? But also, you guys with me so far? Yes. Yeah, sound good? Okay. Now the point is, how do you find problems worth solving? Or how do you even know if you're solving the right problem? It's a very important question to ask that doesn't get asked very often. And I want to slightly move into a new direction, which is right now, of course, this also ties in with open source for social innovation, which is what I specialize in. A lot of work that I do now, that my team does now, is working with very remote communities in developing countries, right? I've worked in about 12, 13 countries so far, very remote areas, both in Southeast Asia and in Africa. I want to share an anecdote of something that my team realized a couple of years back, right? So we were working in a very remote region in Africa and Kenya, and there was an observation that we made, which is no matter where we went, we always found a Coca-Cola product, right? No matter where we went, there, and these were places where you didn't have internet connection. You sometimes didn't have proper 24 hours electricity, but you always found somebody selling Coca-Cola, right? Either on a bike or at the back of the truck, or there was a small shop. And we found that very interesting because we were like, if basic services does not reach these regions, how is Coca-Cola selling their products in the same places? And we became very interested in this, right? So when we started doing some research, we found that we were not the only ones who had noticed this. In fact, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which works on delivering life-saving medicines and aid and vaccines in Africa, they also realized the same thing, right? So Gates Foundation realized that they are not able to deliver medicines to region where Coca-Cola is already selling its products, and they found that super interesting, which actually led to this project, which I find very interesting, called Project Last Mile, right? Which asks the question, if you can get a Coca-Cola product anywhere in the world, why can't you also get medicines in the same places? So basically what happened is Gates Foundation collaborated with Coca-Cola to use their supply chain system to deliver life-saving medicines and vaccines, right? If you think about it for a moment, take a step back and think about what just happened. Coca-Cola is an FMCG beverage company, right? Gates Foundation is working on a healthcare project. They have nothing to do with each other. But Gates Foundation was able to find a solution to their problem by learning from Coca-Cola supply chain expertise and by collaborating with them. Why this is so important is because when you're participating in hackathons in college, again, bringing the context back, Coca-Cola is doing well, but what about us? When you're participating in hackathons in college or when you're building products for whatever reason, sometimes when you know what problem you're solving, we have a bias to only look for inspiration or ask questions within our sector, right? If you're building a healthcare app, we only look at healthcare case studies, right? We only look at healthcare research. But true inspiration comes from outside your sector as well. In fact, some of the most cutting edge innovations have happened because of collaborations outside the sector, right? So just remember that as a concept when you're building products. Now, having said that, we're talking about whether you're solving the right problem or not. And I know that I'm using the word building products so much, but just something for you to remember is that in the context of real world problems, products are not solutions.
They are a part of the solution. Very important. Just like the cyber cafe wala, who was teaching, the people there how to use the Internet Explorer and Netscape, which was back then. So that person is not a part of the product, but that person is a part of the solution. When you're building products, you are limited to thinking only about the app that you're building or the hardware prototype that you're building or whatever. But I would really encourage you guys to think as solution designers and not just product designers, because solving a problem requires much more than just building a product. Product is a very important part of the solution, no doubt. It's the core of your solution, but it's not the solution itself. I want to demonstrate a very, very quick point here, just to bring this home. I'm going to give you a context behind this picture. I know there are no laptops here, but that's fine. I want to show you how complicated these things are in the field. So for context, this project was called Play Pumps, right? It's a real project. Play Pumps was basically designed as a solution to communities that did not have access to water. There was no tap water in these communities, right? Now, it was found that these communities, for some reason, also did not have playgrounds for children. Not a causation, just a correlation, right? Communities without access to water, tap water, also did not have access to playgrounds for children. So a bunch of designers came up with this brilliant solution where you have a merry-go-round, and when the merry-go-round spins, it pumps water to the water tank that you see behind, right there, right? And then a small community now gets access to tap water. Pretty awesome, right? Kids have something to play with, and you also now have access to tap water. Awesome. This project was actually celebrated by everyone around the world. World leaders endorsed it, celebrities endorsed it. It received rockstar funding. But here's the twist in the story. This project is now studied as what you're not supposed to do when you're building solutions. Here's why. There is a design flaw in this project, right? And I chose this example on purpose to help you take a step back from what you're always used to and do some critical thinking. There is a design flaw in this solution that nobody saw until it was actually implemented in the field, and they realized that the design flaw makes this product something that should not exist out there. Question for all of you. Can you guess what the design flaw was? It can be used to extract something else other than water. You're thinking of oil? I feel like you're thinking of oil, but fair. Fair. Anyone else? What's your name? Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Sure. Fair. Okay, so kids are not powerful enough. What's your name? Venkat, thank you. So kids are not powerful enough. They don't play 24/7. You may not get water 24/7, right? Yes. If the water fills up and the kids are still playing, then there's going to be water wastage, right? Okay, pretty awesome. What's your name? Sorry, Vignesh. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Darshan. All right. That's the right answer. So let me break it into context of what Darshan is trying to say. Take a step back for a minute and think about what's happening here, right? You have a bunch of kids, when they use or play on a merry-go-round, it pumps water, and then a community gets water, right? Which means that the children's labor on the merry-go-round is helping pump water and give access to a small community and helping solve that problem, which basically means that this is a project that incentivizes child labor. Yeah, nobody thought about that. But you don't think about these things because it's not really concerning the product. The product is very well designed. It's only when you try to think about your users you realize what happens. By the way, this is a phenomenon that keeps repeating itself. I have been part of teams that have designed blockchain-based apps for like refugee camps without understanding what happens in a refugee camp. Right? It doesn't matter how good your tech is. If you do not understand your users, you're sometimes going to end up creating a problem bigger than the one you're trying to solve. Right? So in short, I'm going to skip this. I can talk about it later. What does all of this have to do with open source? Why are we talking about this in a FOSS meetup, right? Open source is extremely powerful, especially for solving complex social innovation scenarios. Because of this quote that I love, which is many perspectives lead to better solutions. It's way better for you to work with a community, right? It's very hard. Like, for example, when I asked this question, because there were so many of you, there is a probability of one that somebody will get the answer and will understand what was wrong with it. Imagine if it was just you. You would be looking for oil, right? That's what happened, right? So many perspectives lead to better solutions, and that's why it's so powerful to really, open source social innovation. By the way, when I speak about open source, I don't just mean software. It can be hardware, it can be business models, it can also be innovation models. For example, my company, we are trying to open source a lot of our innovation models. We already have. We also are creating programs so that we can teach it to other people, because we feel that the world's problems are way big for just one organization to like solve it by ourselves, right? Of course, these are the other stuff about open source that most of us already know about. But just two things for you to remember is that taking an open source approach means that help is always available. You get to run a project where you get help 24/7 because the open source community is all over the world. You get that for free, right? It's not just limited to your time zone. You have people around the world working to resolve some of the issues, and that's super, super powerful. And of course, errors are fixed much faster. Some of the biases are spotted like way, way faster. So, in conclusion, what I've been trying to say is I encourage you to think of yourself as solution designers and not just product designers. Open source is something that everybody in this room is at least interested in or enthusiastic about. If not, you're contributing to it officially. It's a hard skill, and that's great. You have the most difficult part out of the way. You have a hard skill already. You're an engineer. You can create change, right? But what you should also start understanding is that open source softwares, hardwares, all of that, they are tools, and tools are used to solve problems, right? Which is why you got to start also understanding how, for example, climate change can be solved using open source solutions, right? Or social justice, right? Or consider humanitarian aid or even poverty, right? And if you notice, I didn't write it as open source for poverty. I wrote it as solving poverty using open source, because understanding the problem is more important before you can decide if open source is the right solution method for solving that problem or not, right? So just something very important to remember. Um, and yeah, in closing, this is not pessimistic, the reason why I have this here. We literally just came out of a pandemic. We are in an era of climate change, right? We already have the ACs on and it's still February. That's how hot it's getting. You have to understand that there are now more opportunities for you to solve problems than existed. The world is rapidly changing. Everybody in this room is at least an engineer or somebody capable of coding or making products, which is a great power. And as Ben Parker said to Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility. You have the power to create products and create change, but it's also important for you to understand the problems that you're mapping those for. So yeah, best practices. A lot of best practices in this field are dead because the whole field changed after the pandemic. Consumers behave very differently now. Users behave very differently now. People prefer staying indoors. There's this whole conversation about this becoming the indoor generation, which is leading to its own health risks, right? So it's very important for you to start looking at what's next instead of just looking at what's best, right? And that's it. Thank you so much. You want to connect with me? Scan the code. Yeah. The way you looked at me, I thought that I can't say anything like after like the last second. I know, so am I. If you guys have any questions, by the way, I don't want to keep you here. I'm going to be around during lunch. Feel free to come up and speak to me. As you can see, I'm pretty chill about these things. So yeah, just feel free to have a conversation. Yeah. And Mac, I need to pick your brain as well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So you can align for lunch, and then lunch will be shortly, like for 30 minutes. Sorry for that. You can just grab your with us and just finish it as soon as possible because we are running out of time. We have delayed a bit of our speakers list. So I would request you to please coordinate and not mess up with it. So yeah, we can start. We can have first row go and then.
Again, self-made programs are until getting yeah, and then again, if you have to we talk about it, but just be seated very well. The running will set up in few minutes.
वो पीछे ही खड़े होंगे मैं चेक
ऑडियो हेलो चालू है हेलो 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 एक सेकंड इट्स वर्किंग हेलो
Not the first slide.
साइड आपका क्यों है एक मिनट चेंज यहाँ से हो रहा है ठीक है ना
Hi guys, this is Praveen, and today I'll be speaking about service pickers. So a little about me. I'm a technical lead at Wednesday Solution. I spend my time designing and architecting large-scale systems, streamlining processes, and I'm a huge supporter of accessibility. So if you guys don't know what accessibility is, it's basically building applications that are inclusive and can be used by anyone and everyone. Yeah, so I work with Wednesday. Wednesday is a company that helps solve really tough engineering problems. So we have worked with about 10% of the unicorns, and our portfolio is on a 4. So firstly, right, we want to understand how businesses work. Businesses wants to move fast, right? If you're talking to a business team, they're mostly about moving fast, beating competition, and satisfying your customers. But the same does not go with technical people. So if you're just going to go by the direction given by a business team, you are mostly setting yourself for failure because the expectations don't match. So as a developer, right, it is not just about moving fast. You should account if moving fast has any other effects to it. So what about quality? Don't you want to consider about quality while you're moving fast? So that is something that we'll have to account for. So let's say you're pushing a feature, right? And mostly developers think that okay, this is speed. Speed is the most important factor, and if you're just continuously pushing feature after feature, right, 3 months later you'll realize that whatever you have pushed for the last 3 months is not working anymore. So that is not how it works. So you should have the right strategies in place, right processes in place to make sure that everything that is being pushed, right, has something to audit. For example, let's say if you're trying to push a feature, it's not the job of the developer to kind of do a sanity. There should be processes in place to kind of check if whatever is being pushed is not only making the particular feature work, but also not causing any effects to the other features that are in place. So you should also check if the test passed, if everything is working as expected. So by doing these things, right, you may think, okay, but that doesn't mean we are moving fast. But that's not the case usually. So moving fast doesn't mean just in the short term, right? It's about in the long term as well. So if you're doing all of this time, doing all of these things, it can consume a little more time, but in the long run, right, you're emerging as a clear winner. So for you to move fast, you should also make sure that quality is not compromised. So there is a strong need for high quality products. So it starts from choosing the tools and libraries to follow the right conventions and practices for you to be able to build for consistency, enhanced dev experience, and automation. Now, okay, so why are these things important, right? Why is consistency important? Why is enhanced dev experience important? Why is automation important? Does it really help us in the long picture? It definitely does. So let me give you a scenario. Okay, let's say you have a 3-member team that is working on a project. Now, this team, right, is super focused on building high quality product. They're not just worried about building it in the right time, but also building it the right way. So let's say when they start when they start building the project, right, they are focused on setting up good dev experience on the project. For example, your linters, prettiers, your pre-commit hooks, and things like that. And also there are templates. They're following templates and standardization. And now with this, what happens, right? If someone is trying to collaborate, right, it becomes very easier because you know exactly what a function naming or the convention is actually telling you, right? And also you know what to put where. Let's say, for example, if a task was to change A to B, even the developer who joined you yesterday can do it without a lot of struggle because he exactly knows how things work, what is where, and what to do. So this is very, very important. And also more to it, right? Let's say you have templates in place, you have consistencies enabled. And now the next thing is, let's say if you also had pipelines in place where there were automations written, every time you kind of push something, there is something that checks if whatever is pushing is actually working or no. Is it breaking anything else in the application? And then finally, right, like you have pushed all of it. Usually developers think that once I merge my PR, my job is done. But that is not the case, right? After you merge your PR, what happens with the customers is what actually determines whether you have actually built the product or the feature right or no. So having the right observability, trying to know what's working, what's not working, how your users are feeling about the feature, right, is very important. Now, in contrast to this, right, let's say I gave you a 10-member team, and the only criteria that I gave to you was, hey, I just want speed, and I do not want anything else, right? You kind of push features as much as possible, no sanity checks, no reviews, nothing. You just push it, and then yeah, we are good. But what happens, right, if you're going to follow the second way, maybe for a day or two, right, you might feel that okay, you are moving at a high velocity, and then you realize that whatever you pushed for the last 2 days is just not working as expected. So that is not how we are supposed to do, right? We'll have to have the right standards in place so that anyone who's trying to collaborate with the project does not have struggle navigating through the project. So now there is a strong need for expertise. So we spoke about the ingredients, right? So we told that consistency, automation, improving developer experience. These are all ingredients. But what is the recipe to it, right? Who curates this recipe? And this recipe is not given to you over the night, right? Like, let's say if you had to start a project and if you exactly know every right tool to choose, every right library to choose, the right techniques to follow, the right conventions to follow, and everything, right, it would have been easy. But that doesn't happen. So it comes from experience, right? Like over the years, you know what worked for you, you know what moving slow is, you know what moving fast is, you know what is the right balance to strike, so that along with moving fast, you're also not compromising on the quality. So for these things, right, you usually seek for expertise and mentorship. And then this entire process, right, is not simple. Like it has to do a lot of things, right? Firstly, along with you trying to do things, you also need the right people who have done the things to tell you what to do. So this is really complex. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to make this entire process simpler, and then what used to take like weeks of time, right, and a lot of efforts is now is now very simple to do. So let's discuss about what service picker does. It basically solves this very problem. So if you are trying to set up a project and you have uh, problems with choosing the right conventions, right standards, right tools and library, right? We do everything for you. All that you'll have to do is you'll have to just integrate this tool. It takes about 30 minutes. It reduces your weeks of efforts, and then you're good to go. So it's very easy to use. It's just a CLI with few clicks. You're able to configure your entire full stack application, and then it also reduces your time consumption. And then it has cross stack compatibility. So if you're trying to work with different stacks, it has out of the box support for compatibility. There are battery included clothes. There is automation and rapid environment configuration and everything else. So this is the impact that Service Picker has had on us at Wednesday. So there are about 7,800 infra components that were created with Service Picker, about 4,380 plus dev hours saved, and about 1.2 million end users reached. So this is insane, right? If you had to do all of this manually, it would have taken you a lot of time. But with Service Picker, with just a tool and then few minutes of spending on it, you're able to like automate the entire process and get an out of the box solution that you can use. So we have basically bundled our years of experience into this tool so that you can get started from day one and don't have to like figure out the right things to do. So yeah, you can take a look at the Service Picker at our repository. You can scan to look at the repo for Service Picker. So it's easy to get started, and yeah, you guys can give it a try. Yes, so you can join my team and let's solve some cool problems together. Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and X. So yeah, thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
Don't have any demo for this?
The demo for it? Okay, fine. So it is on GitHub, right? So what we wanted to do was we wanted to talk more about the problem. So the demo is, let's say if I had to give the demo for it, it's going to take about half an hour because for us to set up the entire thing. So you can go and try it out on your own, and we are always available on GitHub, right? If you have any issues, you can reach us out, and we'll be happy to help you out.
So does this deploy infra components?
Yes.
How does it compare to Terraform?
Right. So how Service Picker is different is, let's say with Terraform, right? You have to you write. So this has IACs integrated just like your Terraform or any other thing. But the difference here is it's your one-stop solution. So if you had to choose the right set of tools, right set of libraries, right set of frameworks, and if you wanted everything to be integrated with each other, and then kind of create an IAC for it, right? Then it would be very different from writing it on your own, right? And what we do is we generate IACs based on different scenarios. Let's say, for example, if you are choosing a next application and then you are choosing a Node Express backend versus a Node Express backend with Postgres database with GraphQL integrated and stuff, right? So it's very different. So we kind of handle all those scenarios for you, and then it's out of the box solution where you can just.
So do you have templates predefined for all of those, or can I put my own templates as well?
So currently, we have built these templates, right? So at Wednesday, just like what Mac mentioned, we believe in consistency, right? So we have made templates for front end and back end. On the front end, we have templates for React, Next, and then on the back end, we have for Node Express, right? So using these templates, you can set up the entire thing. The CLI integrates our templates, and then you'll be able to spin up things in under 30 minutes. Anything else? Anyone has questions? Okay, thank you.
Sakshi, Sakshi.
While we post any video on Instagram, right? We all struggle when we post a video on Instagram. We struggle on the transitions that we do. What beats I want to put? How is my music contributing to the beats? How are my transitions doing? We all struggle it all, right? So here's a talk where you basically it will be easier for you to code for the video you want the way you want rather than relying on any video editing apps. You would actually do it your way, right? So I would like to call upon Siddhant to demonstrate his video editing skills while coding and contributing to open source. So give a round of applause for Siddhant.
Is this on? Am I audible at the back?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Sid. This is me. I thank you for joining. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for joining and thank you for attending this interesting one. I have a feeling that this is new to many of you. How many of you are interested in open source? All the room? Great. I'm glad nobody's walked into the wrong room. How many of you are interested in videos in particular? About 50%. Okay. So then my goal for the talk is to get the other 50% of this room sort of interested in the topic. And if I can get some of you to tinker with technologies like this after the session, then mission accomplished, right? Um, I don't have a dedicated slide to myself right here. There isn't much to say. I'm Sid. Most recently I used to work as a lead design engineer. A design engineer is sort of what we call a hybrid between a product designer and engineer, somebody who's just sort of trying to marry both the worlds. I work on problem statements that solve for and put the user at the crux of everything. And then I try to apply a technical lens to it and see what sort of um, solutions we can come up with that would be very difficult to imagine if you weren't quite as technically literate as somebody working in engineering, right? All of you are more qualified engineers than me. I don't have a bachelor's in technology. I have a bachelor's in design. That didn't stop me from writing some code, but I preface that to say that we won't be looking at a lot of code today. That's not what my strength is. But hopefully, what I will do is I'll give you some ideas on what kind of code to write as you go, right? So, um, as I said, I used to work as a lead design engineer in one of India's biggest travel startups called Headout. Headout is an experience marketplace. We used to sell tickets to real life events, concerts, museums, skydiving, Formula One. There's something for everybody. And as I wrapped up like a 4-year career over there, we along the journey developed this fascination with media, imagery, and videos because we saw the impact that it could have on people's purchase decisions, right? You would want to look at a show that has a sparkly trailer. You would want to buy tickets to a skydiving experience because it's very thrilling to do so. And along the way, we sort of like uncovered this need for cracking video at scale. And that's where some of the premise of this conversation came about. I love video. I love media. I'm a designer. I work with imagery. I work with sound, with audio. Um, I have a feeling a lot of us watch a lot of videos on YouTube, and Netflix and Prime Video is just generally a very fascinating space. Somebody said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, a video is like 1,000 words at 30 FPS at the minimum, right? So you can sort of imagine how much it is possible to pack in a very short form medium like this one. The problem with video, though, is that you have to speak a certain language to be able to understand it well. Premiere Pro, After Effects, there's DaVinci Resolve. You have to think in keyframes. You have to have a lens with which to look at. I see a lot of people using Sony cameras in particular, which are very well known for their video quality. So there is quite a few handful amongst you who are very literate in this language like this. Unfortunately, I imagine this to be true for a lot of us, myself included. This is not the language that I am most proficient in or most comfortable in. My kind of languages are things like this: HTML, CSS, Node.js, Visual Studio Code, React, TypeScript. I have recently started dabbling in Rust also. So this is my kind of language. And I wanted to marry my kind of languages to my favorite medium, which is video. And that's where the premise for this session is, right? So I'm going to show you a tool that lets you write videos, MP4 that you can play, upload to YouTube, watch on your phone, share with your friends, using the tools and languages that you're already familiar with. And to facilitate that, one of my favorite projects that's done this lately is a project called Remotion. Show of hands, has anybody heard of or used Remotion before? One person at the back. Oh, great. Awesome. That means this is going to be a very exciting session for the rest of you. So the basic concept of Remotion is quite simple, actually. You write React code. You know how to write it already, or at least that's what we assume. And Remotion helps you convert that into playable video. Writing video in React, which is an alien concept, but one that the more you dissect it, the more palatable it gets over time. And it's built on 3 simple ideas. Number one, a video is just a series of images. Makes sense, right? That's how animation works. That's how Mickey Mouse was invented. That's how the Pablo's, early films were done. So the first idea makes sense. The second one isn't quite as new either. An image is just a screenshot of a website. You all can make websites, all of you can, and you all can screenshot it also. This is how a lot of open graph image generators you might have seen on GitHub sort of start, right? You make a website, you lay out, you write your markup, style it with CSS, and then you take a screenshot and voila, you have your image. But the third idea is what brings this all together. We can automate a browser. And that's not new either, right? That's how test cases are run. That's how Puppeteer works, Selenium works. We have all these sort of automations that we run. We also have tools to do all of these, right? To make a video using series of images, FFmpeg does that. If an image is just a screenshot of a website, we can build it in Chrome using React. And we can automate browsers using Puppeteer and Selenium. Now, Remotion sort of inherits all of these ideas, and you can see where I'm going with this. Remotion combines all of these together in a very compact package and says, hey, you know what? You write your code in React, and we will use these three ideas to convert that into video. And here's how it loosely works. This snippet of code will be familiar to a lot of you, especially if you write React. It's a component that has certain props passed into it. You can see that we are defining essentially what a composition is. Now, composition, for those who don't know, is an inherited term from video editing technology, where you specify sort of like your canvas. Like, this is how large my video is, this is what the resolution is, this is the FPS is. And so we do that right here. We specify the duration in frames, we specify FPS and width and height, and we sort of like tell our end state of the video so that Remotion knows how to render it. But the real magic comes in this next step, because when you're actually writing React, if you think about it, Remotion gives you a hook that's called it's positioned as an entertainment device. विजन प्रो तो बोल रहे कि आप इसमें बॉक्स कोई काम के लिए यूज करते हैं 2 महीने बाद अल्टीमेटली जब सबको रियलाइज होता है वो सिर्फ फ्री देते हैं तो फिर आप बस क्यों नहीं लोगे तो आई एम जस्ट वेटिंग टू सी हाउ दोस इनिशियल 2-3 मंथ्स प्ले उसके बेसिस पे मैं ओपिनियन फॉर्म करूंगा अभी आई एम जस्ट लाइक
Thanks everyone. How many of you are students? Alright, wonderful. And so since most of you are students, we've seen some wonderful talks since morning, right? Especially the last two. Really fascinating to see those journeys, right? How do you get started? What happens? But always the first challenge is, what's the project that you start with? The question in your mind always is, you have a range of ideas, right? One range, like Ron said earlier in the morning, was, can you solve climate change? Like, but code kya likhu to solve climate change, right? That would be a question in your mind. Then on the other front, I think Faika broke it down very nicely to say, you start with documentation. You start with simple things that you can actually contribute. But the intensity needs to be very high. The depth, the quality needs to be very high. I hope everyone has read about the ExpressJS fiasco, right? Everyone sending horrible PRs. Please, that's just a travesty of open source. You need depth in anything you do. So even if your project, right? Even if your project is something as simple as, let's create a calculator. Let's just create a calculator. Now, how do you do it? You have a back-end, front-end. Okay? You can either do everything in the front-end. It could be just one HTML page with some JavaScript. Yeah, you could use HTMX and just do it within tabs itself and be done with it. Then you say, okay, let's make it more complicated. Let's add JavaScript to it. Then you say, let's make it even more complicated. Let's add Node.js to it. Okay, Node.js on the backend, and let me expose an API. What would your API look like? You have /add/subtract.